Y'all, if you've been following the Harmony Montgomery trial, you know it's horrific. But it's also creepily similar to another case from a few years ago, Timothy Jones Jr. Let's get into it. Hi folks, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Delaney, and I'm a true crime writer and all-around murder nerd. On this channel, I like to take deep dives into really horrible cases, and I tend to cuss a lot. So if that sounds like your idea of a good time, go ahead and subscribe. If not, that's cool. You do you. And for my longtime viewers and followers, I know it's been a while since I uploaded anything. I've been working hard on my new book, which centers around the Wayne Dumond case in Arkansas and Missouri. Anyway, today's cases involve children, and the details are pretty gruesome. So if that's something you don't want to deal with, go ahead and sit this one out. I won't be mad. And this one's going to be a long one, so buckle up. So if you haven't been following the Harmony Montgomery case, here's the nutshell. And if you have, and you don't want to sit through the nutshell, skip ahead to this time code. Harmony was born in June 2014 to Adam Montgomery and Crystal Sorey, though the two were split up and Adam was in prison when she was born. By all accounts, he wasn't really involved in Harmony's life much at all. And it's important to note here that Harmony had special needs and was partially blind in one eye. Both of her parents had issues with drug addiction, so when she was only 2 months old, she was taken out of Crystal's custody due to neglect and put into foster care. There was some back and forth of Crystal losing custody and then gaining it back for a couple of years. Long story short, in 2019, Crystal had been trying to regain custody of Harmony and her younger half-brother. She was following the Massachusetts Department of Children and Families requirements that she needed to do in order for her to get custody back, one of which was for her to go to rehab and get clean, which she did. But Crystal says that in February 2019, she had custody court hearings for both of her kids at the same time. She says she tried to get either one of them to reschedule, but they refused. So she ended up having to try to make the Sophie's choice as to which kid's hearing she would be at, knowing she'd probably lose the kid whose hearing she missed. She chose to go to her son's hearing. But the court didn't just send Harmony back to foster care. Instead, they awarded custody to her father, Adam, without any kind of background check or evaluation. Adam had a record, was addicted to drugs, in and out of homelessness, and hadn't participated in any of the court-ordered plans or requirements that Crystal had been. But they handed Harmony over to him anyway, and he immediately took her with him across the state line to New Hampshire. Crystal said that the last time she saw Harmony was around April of 2019, but it wasn't until late 2021 that she reported Harmony missing. There was a lot of speculation in the media and blame towards her for waiting so long to report her daughter missing. In an interview, she explained that at the time she was in rehab, so she didn't have a way to connect with her. She then says that ever since he'd gotten custody of her, Adam was actively blocking her attempts to contact Harmony, so she thought it was just him, quote, playing mind games with her. And 2020 was, well, 2020. After investigating her missing persons case, police came to believe that Harmony had been murdered, probably in December of 2019. They discovered that Adam's now ex-wife, Kayla Montgomery, was still fraudulently claiming her as a dependent in order to get welfare benefits for her. While she was under arrest for that, she was questioned about Harmony, but she lied to police to cover for Adam. Eventually, though, she gave it up and testified that Adam had beaten Harmony to death one morning, and afterwards he'd carried her body around with them in a duffel bag, then a cooler, for months and months, until, at one point, dismembering her remains and renting a U-Haul van to dispose of them. Her remains still haven't been found. Adam is now standing trial for second-degree murder, second-degree assault, and witness tampering. He earlier pled guilty to falsifying evidence and abuse of a corpse. So as I'm following this case, it's looking more and more like a similar filicide case from a few years ago, that of Timothy Jones Jr. And if you don't know, filicide means the killing of one's own children. On the surface, Adam and Timothy couldn't be more different. While Adam was a dirtbag with a record and living in his car, Timothy was, on the surface anyway, a devout fundamentalist Christian and real success story. He graduated with honors with a degree in computer engineering and had a well-paying job in the tech industry. But scratch the surface and a very different picture begins to emerge of old Timothy. He was originally from Illinois and had served in the Navy, but was discharged in 2000 over substance abuse issues. He was busted for possession of cocaine right after his discharge and served 6 months in jail. After he got out, he went on a crime spree of car theft, burglary, and passing forged checks. This time he was handed a longer sentence. But once he got out of prison in 2003, he did seem like he turned his life around. He converted to Pentecostalism and went to college, eventually earning a degree in computer engineering. And now we get to another part of the story where Timothy and Adam couldn't be more different. Where Adam had been nothing but a deadbeat dad, Timothy took the opposite, but even more toxic, approach to fatherhood. Let's start with his marriage to Amber. Timothy and Amber met when they were both 19 and working at a children's arcade/fun park, kind of Chuck E. Cheese type deal. Amber was in a pretty precarious situation at the time, working 3 jobs to try and support herself. She'd previously been homeless after her family kicked her out of the house when she was a minor. He was going to school part-time, working part-time, and apparently really active in his church. She said one of the things she admired about him was how intelligent and ambitious he was.
He's intelligent. He's smart. He's the smartest person I know. Tim was very goal-oriented. Very smart man. Everything that he had set out to do as a goal, he accomplished, and I found that very honorable.
Because of his fundamentalist belief that long courtships or engagements were too tempting to engage in the sin of sex outside of marriage, he and Amber got married only 6 weeks later. Again, according to his fundamentalist beliefs about the role of women, the couple began having children very quickly.
Tim's motto was, women are supposed to be fruitful and multiply. A woman is supposed to listen to her husband.
They would have a total of 5 kids: Mara, Elias, Natan, Gabriel, and Elaine. Again, following his religious beliefs, Amber stayed home to care for them. Timothy wouldn't allow her to work outside the home or even get a driver's license. When Timothy was hired at Intel in 2009, the family moved to South Carolina. And despite the fact that he was making over $60,000 a year, which is a good salary in that area, he moved his family into one dilapidated trailer house after another. Neighbors said that their yard would be piled with trash and junk, and the kids looked dirty and weren't attending school. They said Timothy was extremely hostile and argumentative, and one neighbor said he'd brought a gun to confront them and at one point threatened to shoot their dog. In 2011, someone reported Timothy to the Lexington County Department of Social Services on account of his unstable, potentially violent behavior and the fact that he'd been trying to purchase a gun on the black market. When the DSS caseworker visited the family, she reported that she found the house was, quote, very cluttered and that power tools were accessible to the children. So they put in place a safety plan to get the household clean and safe for the children. DSS made 3 more visits to the Jones house to follow up on that plan, but when a caseworker made a 4th unannounced visit in late October of that year, Timothy was so hostile and aggressive that the caseworker had to call law enforcement for protection. That day, the caseworker determined that, quote, the children were suffering from maltreatment and neglect that presented a substantial risk of physical injury. But no action was taken to actually protect the children. After the new year, 2012, DSS caseworkers returned to the Jones home. They documented physical violence and neglect against the kids, but again took no action to protect them. In May of that year, Amber filed a domestic violence report with the sheriff's office and DSS. She said that Timothy had threatened to snap her neck in front of the children and to shoot the neighbors. She also said he had played chicken with an 18-wheeler while she and the children were in the car, then headbutted and spit on her. DSS came up with another safety plan, but no actual actions were taken. They suggested that Amber go to a domestic violence shelter, but she didn't. And now we can sit here and Monday morning quarterback her decision all day, but I think what gets lost is just how dependent she was on Timothy. She didn't have a car or even a license, no work history since she was a teenager, and had 5 little kids to take care of. A month later, Timothy caught her having an affair with a neighbor and took the children with him to Mississippi to live with relatives. On top of fleeing with the kids, Timothy also stopped paying the utility bills at the home, leaving Amber with no place to live. This, to me, sounds like pure spite. He wanted to make her suffer for cheating on him, so he didn't just stop supporting her, he took away the only thing she cared about, her kids. When Amber called DSS to report her children as being kidnapped, the caseworker told her that since there was no legal custody arrangement, there was no kidnapping. They told Amber she'd have to get a family lawyer. Again, she didn't have a job or even a driver's license, so that would have been impossible. In October 2012, DSS closed the Joneses children's case, ruling that risk had been reduced and services were no longer needed. At some point, Timothy came back to Lexington County because in March 2013, a school teacher there contacted DSS to report that one of the kids had head lice, and Timothy had considered using kerosene and a heat gun to treat it. Over the next 2 months, school officials made 2 more reports of suspected child abuse, including repeated spankings with a belt. Again, Lexington County DSS didn't do shit to protect the children's safety. They just drafted yet another safety plan. That summer, Timothy filed for divorce on the grounds of infidelity. And here's where the 2 cases of Adam Montgomery and Timothy Jones Jr. start to line up. At their divorce hearing, Timothy said Amber was unfit to have custody of the kids because of her sloppy housekeeping, lack of employment, which, remember, had been enforced by him, and lifestyle, meaning she was living with her boyfriend. But where else was she supposed to go? His criminal past, all the reports of domestic violence and mental instability, and the multiple child abuse investigations were never mentioned. Amber, of course, didn't have any money for an attorney to defend herself. She actually didn't contest custody because she figured that since she didn't have any way to support the kids, they probably would be better off with their father.
What was the final order regarding child custody?
I was not willing to give up my rights as their mother, so we came to an understanding, an arrangement that we had joint custody, him being the primary caregiver. I did not want him being the primary caregiver, if you will, but he was the better provider. He made the finances. I was just getting on my feet. I thought I was making the best decision I could as a mother.
She also thought that his abusive behavior was because of her. Gee, I wonder where she got that idea. And thought that if she was gone, he wouldn't be so stressed out. Their divorce was finalized on September 30th, 2013, and Timothy was awarded primary custody of the kids, with Amber getting visitation every other weekend and some holidays. The visits were 100% on Timothy's terms. He would only let her see the kids at Chick-fil-A, of course, with him present. She wasn't allowed to take them to her home or anywhere else. This is similar to the custody court situation with Adam Montgomery and Crystal Sorey in a couple of ways. For one, I think both of these cases show how the custody courts are stacked against the parent with the least amount of money, which is usually the mom. Because Timothy had the money for a lawyer and Amber didn't, he got custody despite his obvious, well-documented red flags. For Adam Montgomery, he didn't even need a lawyer. He just had to show up to the hearing that Crystal couldn't, because she also didn't have any legal representation that could have helped her get it rescheduled. The other thing that both Timothy and Adam have in common is something I've seen and experienced too many times. Dads wanting custody only as a way to get back at their exes. Adam was completely absent from Harmony's life up until just a few months before he was granted custody. And while Amber says that Timothy was a good dad to the kids, in reality he left the day-to-day work of caring for them to her. Besides the neglect and abuse, Adam and Timothy tried so hard to isolate the kids from their moms, and that shows they didn't actually care for their kids. The kids were just pawns, objects to be used to hurt Crystal and Amber. And while Amber might have believed that Timothy was a good dad, she was tragically misguided. All throughout 2014, teachers and other adults were reporting Timothy to DSS. In April, a teacher reported a handprint-sized bruise on one of the girls who said she'd been grabbed and pulled around the house as punishment. This was never investigated. In May, another report was made to DSS claiming one of the kids had been choked and thrown against a wall, leaving bruises on the child's neck and jaw. The children said they were beaten repeatedly with belts. They were also forced to do push-ups and excessive exercises as punishment. When DSS asked Timothy about the bruises, he explained them away by saying the kids were very clumsy and bruised easily. How original. A month after that report, the kids' babysitter called DSS, reporting that she had walked in just as Timothy was, quote, about to hurt one of the kids. She also reported that Timothy withheld food from them. But again, DSS took no action to ensure the kids' safety. A month after that, in July, a teacher called DSS to make yet another abuse report after seeing bruises all over 3 of the 5 kids. And yet, despite all these reports, a DSS supervisor closed the file. Only a month later, in August and just weeks before the murders, an anonymous caller reported physical abuse to DSS. So a caseworker and a sheriff's deputy visited the home where they found the child with a bandaged eye. Timothy claimed it was from his sister accidentally hitting him with a doorknob. But the caseworker found evidence that Timothy had been beating one of his sons and wasn't feeding his kids properly. Her report stated that Timothy sometimes fed all 5 kids with nothing but a 20-piece chicken nugget dinner. Timothy was also on record as stating he didn't want to send his kids back to public school because he, quote, does not want the school to report the beatings, unquote. The caseworker made a report noting substantial risk of physical abuse, but again, no action was taken. Instead, they referred the case to law enforcement. It's unclear what, if anything, law enforcement did to follow up on this. What we do know is that 20 days later, Timothy Jones Jr. murdered all 5 of his kids. To go back to the Harmony Montgomery case for a second, this is clearly a different scenario, where the Jones children had people looking out for them, reporting the abuse they saw. Their county DSS let them down. In Harmony's case, there's no evidence that anyone other than her uncle ever reported any abuse. She had fallen so far through the cracks, no one could see her. But she did have one person who cared about her, who had been trying to contact her. And after months of getting nowhere, Harmony's mother, Crystal, reported her missing. And that finally sparked a search for her. The Joneses kids also reported them missing on September 3rd, 2014. 3 days later, in Smith County, Mississippi, Timothy's black Cadillac Escalade was pulled over by police during a routine traffic checkpoint. The sheriff's deputy who pulled him over said that the driver was acting erratic and combative. He suspected that he was intoxicated. And here's where the cases of Adam Montgomery and Timothy Jones Jr. share the most gruesome similarity. When the deputy got closer to the vehicle, he said he could smell chemicals and, as he put it, the stench of death. A search of the vehicle turned up some synthetic marijuana, along with some more troubling items: bleach, muriatic acid, and children's clothing. Then, in the back of the SUV, they found evidence pointing to something way worse than a DUI: a large puddle of blood and bodily fluids crawling with maggots. The search also turned up some handwritten checklists that included phrases like melt the bodies and grind the bones to sand. So they arrested Timothy. When they ran a check on him, they discovered that he was wanted in South Carolina over a welfare concern regarding his children. In fact, he and all 5 of his kids, Mara, who was now 8, Elias, who was 7, Natan, 6, Gabriel, 2, and Elaine, 8, had been reported missing. Back at the Smith County Jail, after 2 days of questioning, Timothy eventually told police what had happened to his kids. He said that Natan had broken some electrical outlets, and so he had made the boy do sit-ups, push-ups, and squats as punishment. He also admitted to, quote, smacking the boy before sending him to bed. Timothy then claimed that when he went in to check on him later that evening, Natan was dead. He said he pondered what to do for several hours and even left the 4 surviving children in the house with Natan's body to go buy cigarettes. He claimed that a demonic voice told him to kill the kids and that they were going to chop him up and feed him to the dogs. So he strangled them. Mara and Elias with his bare hands, Gabriel and Elaine with a belt, because, as he put it, their necks were too tiny for him to get a good grip on. He then placed each child's body in a garbage bag and loaded them into the back of his Escalade. With his children's bodies in the back of the vehicle, he drove around for 9 days, eating fast food and smoking synthetic cannabis, covering 700 miles across 3 states. During this time, his cell phone records show that he called the babysitter to say that he was taking the kids and moving out of state. He also went online to research ways to disintegrate a body faster and which countries didn't have extradition treaties with the U.S. for murder charges. He made lists of steps to dismember and hide the bodies, as well as other ways to cover his tracks. He was even captured on camera at a Walmart buying saws, muriatic acid, a dust mask, goggles, and a 5-gallon bucket. However, unlike piece of shit Adam Montgomery, he told police he just could not go through with dismembering his own children. When their bodies started to decay, he said he poured bleach over them to try and mask the odor. After he finished his confession, he once again showed himself to be a better man than Adam Montgomery, because he led police to an isolated area near Pineapple, Alabama. There, just off an old logging road, wrapped inside garbage bags, were the badly decomposed remains of his 5 children. Jones stood trial for the murder of his children on April 29, 2019. He looked like a completely different person from the scruffy, strung-out dude who'd been arrested 5 years earlier. He was now clean-shaven, balding, and considerably chubbier, a transformation worthy of Jodi Arias. At his trial, he attempted an insanity defense, claiming he had undiagnosed schizophrenia. He claimed Amber leaving him to care for the children alone, despite the fact that he took them from her, had put undue stress on his mental state, which he self-medicated with alcohol and synthetic cannabis. His defense claimed he couldn't tell right from wrong when he killed his children.
Sure, Jan.
But at trial, Dr. Richard Frierson, a court-appointed psychiatrist who wasn't representing or being paid by either side, disagreed. Frierson concluded that Jones knew it was legally and morally wrong to kill his children and was faking and exaggerating the symptoms of schizophrenia. Frierson instead diagnosed Jones with substance-induced psychotic disorder caused by his escalating use of synthetic cannabis in the months before the killing. His defense was also undercut by the fact that he changed his story. At one point, he claimed he was hearing voices telling him to kill his children, and that he thought they were going to chop him up and feed him to the dogs. But at other times, what I believe is the truth slipped out. He said that he'd gotten angry with Natan for crying and saying that he wanted to go live with his mother, so Jones strangled him in a fit of rage. And when Mara walked in on him, he decided he needed to kill her too. He said he felt he had to kill the other children rather than let them go live with their mother. This version seems more like the truth because A, he was a well-documented abuser, B, he was also a narcissistic control freak who only wanted custody of the kids as revenge on Amber, and C, he would rather take their lives than let her get custody. On the stand, Amber testified that Timothy had told her he would never let her have custody of the children. After deliberating for 6 hours, the jury found him guilty on all 5 murders. He was given the death sentence, which he appealed all the way to the Supreme Court. Last year, SCOTUS refused to take the case, which means his death sentence still stands. As of the time I'm filming this, Adam Montgomery's trial for second-degree murder, second-degree assault, and witness tampering is still ongoing. He pled guilty to falsifying evidence and abuse of a corpse. The death penalty has been taken off the table by the prosecution, though I'm not sure why. Harmony's remains still haven't been found. One other thing that both of these cases did was shine a light on the failures of the agencies who were supposed to be protecting these children. The Jones children's mother, Amber, whose last name is now Kaiser, sued the South Carolina Department of Social Services for gross negligence and is seeking $3 million in damages. Her lawsuit claims that the agency's repeated failure to protect the children from a well-documented abuser was the cause of their demise. In fact, a year before the murders, in 2013, complaints about DSS had led several state senators to form the DSS Oversight Subcommittee. They held hearings and gathered testimony from parents with experience in the system. Many of them talked about how the agency blew them off when they reported evidence of abuse and neglect. One parent said, "Phone calls, complaints, emails, contacts, subpoenas all go unanswered." And because of its shitty record keeping, DSS didn't even know how many children in its system had been killed as a result of abuse or neglect. 2 months after the murders, the committee released its report. It found that South Carolina's DSS employees were unqualified, their caseloads were excessive, and the DSS's overall systems were inadequate. It seems to have done some good. DSS got increased funding for 177 new caseworkers and 67 new caseworker assistants. As for more training for its caseworkers and better record keeping, that remains to be seen. Similarly, because of Harmony's case, the Massachusetts Office of the Child Advocate initiated a full-scale multi-system investigation to explore the decision-making in Harmony's case, including the placement of Harmony in the custody of Mr. Montgomery. Their report found that all the agency's assessments and case management had focused on Harmony's mother, Crystal, and nothing was done to evaluate Adam's suitability to care for Harmony. It also concluded that Harmony's needs and well-being were not given priority over Adam's parental rights. The DSF-appointed attorney for Harmony presented no evidence about her special needs, and instead just went along with Adam's claim that he should have custody. The report also calls for the standard recommendations, thorough reviews of all the policies and procedures to ensure that a child's well-being is, quote, appropriately balanced with parents' rights. Forgive me if I'm less than impressed. If you suspect a child is being abused, please contact your state's DHS or call the national hotline number on the screen. One call could save a life. So, what are your thoughts about these cases? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, I guess enjoyed isn't really the right word, but you know what I mean. Give it a like and subscribe for more deep dives like this. Till next time, Darklings. You can help me make more true crime content by supporting me on Patreon, where for as little as a cup of coffee, you can get early access to videos, bonus content, and free Murder Nerd merch. The link is in the description.